Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about the time of transition, the time of the sunset of our life, the time when we receive a diagnosis, perhaps the end of life. Maybe we are in hospice, maybe we are at home and not feeling well. Perhaps a time when we say, I just think my days are numbered. What do we do? How do we feel? How do we make sense out of our life? How do we find and connect with our soul and our spirit? And perhaps do we even need to wait until that time? Can we connect with our soul and our spirit much earlier in life and be able to live a life that we say, there's so much more to me than this day, than this vehicle, than this legacy I might be creating? What is it truly all about? Are we an eternal spirit? And this lifetime in this human existence is just a chapter in our book. My guest today is Dr. Brad Stuart. His book is Facing Death, Spirituality, Science, and Surrender at the End of Life. Dr. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much, Jeanette. It's great to be here.
So glad to have you, because I think this topic, so many times people will say, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm going to push it off, it doesn't pertain to me, and it's unimportant. Perhaps?
Yes, it's very common, and it's very natural. I think people live their lives, they don't spend much time thinking about how their life may end, and I think it's useful to do that. I happen to have a lot of experience in it, but whether you have experience or not, I think the end of life is part of life, and, it would be useful to think of it that way.
Yeah, I think so many times people say, but this is my story and this is how it's going to play out. And you and I both know, being in healthcare as we have been for decades, that people will say, I have all my papers in order, everything is ready, and that's how it's going to play out. And we both know the percentage of that actually occurs, correct?
Yes, and I kind of wish it was like you said, that, people have their papers in order. A lot of people don't have their papers in order, and I think we could spend some time talking about that. But I think to just answer your question, it's very hard to know how things are going to take place at the end of your life. It's hard to predict that, including it's very difficult to predict how you're going to feel when you come to know that your life's end may be approaching. So I think we need to keep an open mind, and we need to be emotionally flexible about it. And I think making plans, like you say, getting your papers in order is a really good idea.
I think also, too, the idea of medicine is going to save me. In other words, no matter what you do in your life, medicine is going to save you at the end. It's going to cure you. It's going to keep you in the place you need to be in until you're ready to check out, a certain way. Many people believe that. They come to me after they are from you, and they'll say, medicine couldn't help me. Now I need you to help me. And this is the amount of time I have. And I think perhaps the idea is that has medicine, has healthcare, have any of the professions almost actually cured things to give you a time in which you could say, whoop, flip the switch, I'm now healthy again and I'm not going to die today. I think many times people will say they believe that, and they're really questing for that in their thoughts and in their conscious mind. And then everything else, they are very disturbed by the answer. And I think they live disturbed by the answer instead of living in awareness of what they actually are in the moment, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think medicine, our ability to cure illness is better than it has ever been. We've made incredible progress, and I think the progress that we're going to make in coming years is going to be even more unbelievable. However, it pays to keep in mind that you can be cured of your illness, but that's just a temporary pause in the way your life continues to march on. And so curing is really important. As a physician, learning how to cure it's critical. But learning how to heal in the face of the knowledge that you're not going to live forever, that kind of healing into being able to accept who you really are, I think that's just as important as the cure.
Because you write in your book, Could the Real You Persist After You Die? I think just as I shared in the beginning of the show, are we an eternal soul? And this human existence is a chapter in the book. I think many people are struggling with that concept, and they believe this is their only life. You know how so much social media or propaganda out there, or dogma or beliefs or truths are, this is the only life you have, you need to make something of it. So there's a lot of confounding messages, perhaps?
Yes. I have to admit, I used to be really skeptical. And while I started out in science, I did brain research before I went to medical school, and I was very hard-headed about, this life is all there is, and when it ends, that's it. I felt that way myself until, for the last 30 years of my career, I did end-of-life care in hospice, and I saw a lot of things that shook my beliefs. And now, the reason why I titled my book Facing Death, Spirituality, Science, and Surrender is science is beginning to give us evidence now that there really may be something that you move into after your body dies, something that you're aware, a new place that your awareness goes to. And I would say we have harder and harder scientific evidence from the stories people tell us when they're brought back, say, in the ICU. It's funny, the intensive care specialists in the ICU are the ones who are hearing a lot of these stories because we're getting so good at pulling people back, say, when their hearts stop. And many of them have incredible stories to tell. And oddly, all their stories are the same. They all have the same elements. And so I think we need to begin to take really seriously, on the basis of scientific evidence, maybe the fact that consciousness does persist after your body dies.
I think also, too, the idea that consciousness is not limited to just the human dogma or the human confines of our limitations that we put upon it. I know for myself, I'm also a shaman and a medium, and I can't tell you how many times in this lifetime that I have actually had those near-death experiences. I've had so many surgeries, had so many experiences, did not want to come back. I was confounded. I was not coming back, and I remember distinctly one event. And they said, man, it took us so long to try to get you back. What was it? And I said, I just didn't want to come back. I just didn't want to do it. I was not interested, And I think the idea, too, is that when you have these experiences, you say, it's got to be something more. Maybe there's something different. Maybe this will put me on a different path. I think many people have had these experiences and they haven't even realized what it was all about. Perhaps?
Yes. One thing that all the stories seem to have in common is that when people leave their body and yet they continue to be aware, all of them tend to report that what they feel is as though they've woken up from a dream. And in fact, what they'll say is, in our regular life now, like all of us listening to this, when you're dreaming at night and you wake up in the morning, it doesn't take you long before you realize, wait, that was a dream. That wasn't real. After people die, what they report when they come back is that once they were out of their body and away from the limitations of the human brain, once the brain is out of the way, your awareness feels as though you've woken up again, even more awake than you were in life. And I think that's very striking. And if you look at that and take it seriously, you start to wonder, where do we come from and where do we go to, and what is this life really about? It's really food for thought.
I know after the last time it had happened, it was just, I think it was last year that happened again. And I came out and I just said, what's the point? What is the point? How many times are we going to keep on doing this? And I got to the point where every day I would set my feet down on the floor and I woke up in the morning and I would say, oh, dang, what the heck am I doing back here again? And it's like every day it would be like that. And then I would say, okay, what's the purpose? What's the motion? What's the movement about? And then that's truly coming into the point of, what are we here for in the first place? I think a lot of times people will say, well, I'm here because I'm supposed to do this, care for my family, my children. I'm supposed to be able to have a job. I'm supposed to be able to ... The whole obituary kind of legacy that they've concocted. And they believe that that is their essence and their identity, and that's their life. Don't you think perhaps in your book, Facing Death, you truly talk about it, as I share here, is that there's more to us than what we are talking about is that litany of things that we've, quote, done, perhaps?
Yes. I'm a very, I put a lot of value on achievement. I got my education and I was in medical practice, and, I've achieved enough things in one lifetime that I'm kind of satisfied with where I've gotten. And it turns out when you look at the stories that people tell when they come back from the other side after death, they all tend to say, all that stuff that I thought was important, the achievements, even the, having a big family, some of the things we put very high value on, it turned out that those were not the most important things. The most important things were the little things that I never noticed as I was going through my life. The time that someone asked me for help and I didn't have the time and I did it anyway, and they were so grateful. And what you get to see once you're beyond the limitations of your body and your brain is how there's a ripple effect from those little things that you do that are just good things, and they ripple out, and you get to see in an instant how that affects other people that you'll never even meet. And I find that really striking, that it's the little things that we don't give much thought to that may be some of the most important things we do and think and feel.
I also shared a lot of times about the giving back syndrome, and so many times people will say, oh, well, I give back, I donate, I'm someone who goes out there and I volunteer. And then they go back home and then they're yelling and screaming at their kids on the way back, or they're complaining about this, that, or the other. And then you wonder, are we giving back or giving out of just our monetary issues or something that we feel that we're supposed to do versus giving of our love or our consideration, our compassion, empathy, or perhaps our heart? Isn't that the greater good? Because in your book you share about being able to say the language is completely earthbound and incompatible with eternal truth. I was looking at this the other night, and I was having a feeling, and I said, oh, what am I feeling? And I say, what is this? Is this sadness? Is this loneliness? Is this loss? Is it grief? Because I pick up when people die, and I know it. And I said, no, it's just a feeling. It's just energy. And that's it. So if we think about it, when we're helping others, are we not giving back our energy? We have like this communication. It's a give and take. And when we think when people are ill, and we sit and we look right directly into their eyes, and we just maybe touch their hand and be able to just be in there in the moment in time, that's a greater language than you don't need the words. Sometimes when we say, I just need to be present, and that's so much more important for so many of these souls, perhaps?
I think you just said one of the critical truths of living in this world. And thinking back, I didn't really understand it at the time. I was pretty young back then, but when I changed from regular medicine I did a lot of work in the ICU in the hospital, and not, to be modest about it, I mean, I saved a lot of lives, and I realized it's not that hard to save lives. You need to know technically what you're doing. You need to be dedicated. I was on call 24/7 for years. All that was important. But I switched over to end-of-life care when I realized that the people that affected me the most and that I think I had the biggest impact on were the people that I couldn't save. The people who, no matter what I did, I knew, and I helped them to understand also that nothing we could do was going to keep them alive, and we had to sit together eye to eye and deal with that. And sitting with someone who's suffering and afraid and just being there with them, I discovered, is so much more important than all the technical knowledge that I'd been using for so many years. The important thing is the healing that happens when two people are together, and just for that moment, one has something to give and one has something they need, and that's a magnetic reality of life, that kind of giving and receiving when someone really needs just your presence, that I think is really critical to experience.
I think it is so vitally important. I look at it all the time, and I really say that just as your work, you were pretty much there to be able to be a soul leader, someone who's going to be like what we call forerunners. Just as myself, I was a dental hygienist for 20 years and from the 70s on, and I look at it and I said, what is my purpose here? It is not this job, so to speak. And it was that every single patient I put back in the chair, I instantly would look in their eyes and have a connection for at least 2 to 3 seconds. So when I looked back in reflection, I was able to say, that job, J-O-B, was for me to be able to connect with those souls. That's all it was. And I think perhaps just as you shared about when you were saving the lives too, and those that you helped, and even in the hospice or ICU, it was very similar. You were being asked to connect souls. Isn't that the greater good in what our purpose is, perhaps?
I think it is. I think that it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that we, underneath everything that we see and hear and know while we're awake in this world, underneath all that is a connection between everyone, among all souls, as you put it. And that realizing that connection and living it, particularly when someone looks at you or talks to you and you can tell that what they really need in that moment is someone else to just be there for them, not even do anything, just be together, the comfort of human companionship. Just that is one of the most important things that we can do as people for each other.
Let's talk about the word healing. So many times people are out there now, we need to be healed. We need to be out of our trauma. We need to be physically fit. We need to whatever, anti-aging, all this other stuff. And in essence, truly, the human vehicle was not meant to be this eternal thing. This human vehicle is a biological process. And if we look at it, we say, oh, okay, can we heal our consciousness and say, I am more than this, and I am, the healing part is that I am not broken. My body is in its own cycle in which it is going through. I am not broken. I am not whatever my consciousness might say my earlier traumas were. Another example of healing might be that I'm able to learn to change. My brain chemistry can change. My physical body can change. So the idea of healing is almost as if it's just all of this transitory cycles that we are going through, and it's really about just awareness, because it's going to be very temporary. It's very just for the moment. I am healed in my heart today. I feel full, period. Even though you might not be able to get off of your chair, even though it might be your last breath, it could still be that healing moment, perhaps?
I think that's a great way to put it. I think healing means wholeness. Healing means finding the place in yourself and looking for that place in people that you're with that's underneath all your thoughts and feelings, even underneath what you regard as yourself. Underneath all that is just basic awareness. And I think being able to find that place, that's one reason why meditation has been a core spiritual practice for thousands of years. Real good quality meditation, I think, is developing the knack to find that place in yourself that actually when you get there is empty. It's not full of thoughts. It's not full of anything. It's just simple awareness, simple, pure awareness. That really, I think, is who we actually are. And yet it's deceptive because I'm sitting right here now talking to you. I've got a good, clear concept of who I think I am, who I am as a self. But underneath that is who I really am. And hopefully I can come from that place channeled through the self that I think I am, because the core essence of me is pretty simple, and finding that place in another person and connecting with it, I think, is how we find our true wholeness. It's pretty simple and actually pretty empty. You don't have to really do a lot. You just need to know how to actually be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, also, too, someone had said to me, I had gone to a function and I hadn't seen these people for like 20 years, and I was having tremendous back problems, and I had just flown there. So it was pretty much on full tilt. And I was moving about very slowly, and they said, oh, how are you doing? And I said, oh, I am doing awesome. Things are great. And they looked at me and they said, what are you talking about? Look at you. You can't even stand up straight. You're in tremendous pain. What do you mean you're doing great? I said, that's what my physical body's going through right now, but I am myself. I'm doing awesome. I think we can say that if you are a person who is in this position or in this time, you can use that as a kind of a meter to say, which side of the road am I on, and how can I work to be able to open up my consciousness, perhaps?
I think so, and I think it's also really important to remember that there are times when a person really has trouble finding that place. I know as a physician myself, I mean, I met a lot of people who I realized it wasn't that they didn't want to or weren't willing to really relax and be whole. It's that they were not able to. They couldn't. They didn't have the strength. They didn't have the experience, maybe. And my job was to set aside everything that I thought about them, all my judgments, even all my diagnostic skills and everything else. Once that process was, I'd done everything I could, and just set it all aside and just find the place where when they looked me in the eye, they could tell that I was just there and wanting to know who they really were and how they were really doing. And so we were able to relax and find that place together. And suffering, when it's really strong, I've had cancer myself. I was in a terrible place when I was diagnosed with cancer. It took me by surprise, even though I suspected it, and I was suffering badly. It took me a long time to recover from that, and until I was able to find my way out the other side, I had really a hard time stopping my own suffering, and that taught me a lesson. That suffering is very stubborn, and yet it's a fact. You can't live in a body and escape it. If you're Buddhist, you believe that life is suffering. And so, suffering is a fact, and I think we need to accept it, and I think we can help each other find our way through it.
Let's talk for a minute about the true end of life, when those are saying that I really need to be able to have someone to save me. I am getting close to the end. Or we say that, when many times when they put their loved ones into assisted care or hospice or nursing homes or whatever, and then they start to do the process from there. There's several of these so-called homes in Arizona where I used to live for a short period of time. And they were always doing new therapies, new treatments on all of the people in the nursing homes and stuff. Oh, see, they're getting better. And I'm thinking, gosh, can you just let them go if they're ready to go? This quest of holding on when we're in our later years is it's getting to be more and more difficult, I think, because in the younger years, when I grew up just as you, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, there was not this quest to be able to say, there's more, we have to do more, we have to save more because. And I think as soon as you use the word because, that's about outside forces. It has nothing to do about your heart and your soul, what you're supposed to be here in, and when you start to use that word because, it's because I need to go to this event, because I want them to be around, or because whatever it is. And it's all about control. Can we control the process? Can we control how they end up in that end of lifetime? And isn't that truly where a lot of people really get super, and that's like stop dead in your tracks, yes?
Yes. I spent a lot of my career developing models of care where we could see people in their homes when they were really ill instead of bringing them into the hospital.
Right.
And I felt that was really important because once you're in the hospital, you're going to have things done to you, and right. It's very tough to stop that process of doing. Now, there are people who really, really demand that, and there are families who really demand that everything be done, which is why when I was taking care of people in the hospital, I would always spend time. I would ask the family, I would say, look, I'd really like to talk to your mom alone for just a minute. Would you mind if we just took a minute with just the two of us and everyone else would leave? And I would sit and ask the person. In fact, I have a story or two in my book about doing this. I would ask the person how they really felt and how they felt about their treatment and what they really wanted. And it was interesting how often no one had asked that person, none of the other doctors, none of the nurses, no one had sat down and said, what do you really want out of all this? And it was a shock to me at first until I started realizing so many people felt this way, that people, once they were alone, would say, I don't really want to have all these things done to me, but there's nothing I can say. My family really need me to have this chemotherapy, or, I can't say no. And when you're ill, when you're approaching the end of life, you don't have a lot of strength, and you really can't stand up to pressure if it's coming from your family to have all those things done to you. And I don't think people realize how important it is to just sit quietly and ask the right questions to someone who may really just want to have some peace. So that they can let go. And as you just said, that many people don't want or need to be in control so much anymore. They would like to be able to let go and just have peace and comfort. And that's actually what hospice is all about, which I guess is why my career wound up there, because peace and letting go are the secrets, are the keys to finding your way out the portal at the end of life in a way that has meaning and that is gentle and is good for you and everyone around you. And I think I wish that was the way our whole system would go. But you can't argue with the fact that we're getting so good at curing that often the end of life is pretty hazy. You don't really know when the end exactly is going to be. So it's very complicated. I just think that peace and letting go are something that we have to keep in mind. Is if there are goals, those are the ones.
I know for myself, I had told my kids, just let me go into the sunset. I'm good with this. I've given them all of their things. I said, put them all in a box, gave them all back to them. Don't come to my house after I pass away to say, oh, isn't this nice? Mom saved something. It's nothing here. Because I've kind of closed that door to be able to bring them into the story already. And they were like, okay, we're at peace with that. We're good. We've got it. However, I have also helped many patients at the time, and they said, we want to stay at home. But then what happens is when it gets down to the nitty-gritty and you're watching your loved one gasping for air, for breath, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 2 days, it could be a week. And it's very difficult for many people to say, I wanted to be able to give them what they wanted, but I didn't know I had to be the one to be there and facilitate it and to go through the process with them. And it does affect the loved ones that are left when they are sitting there in the process if they are not ready for it also. So I think the ideas of hospice is definitely to have someone else there, but there are many people that don't use hospice and someone just passes in the house because that's what they wanted to believe. I know for myself, another patient, she said, I'm going to go to the hospice. Okay, fine, go. And then she said she, felt that the end was near, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the hospital took her in an ambulance to her house. She had a huge party. They were all waiting for her and everything. She died within 2 hours, but she did go out in her home on her own. But she didn't have someone witness that, you see. So I think there's so many different variants of the way in which we exit our life. But to be able to say, I want it this way, and you're really banking on that, and things go awry, people get scared. People are in fear. People really start to have questioning themselves in what to do. And that's where a lot of the confusion comes in and a lot of the pain, perhaps.
I think that's true. And I'm going to say something very practical here for a second. This isn't spiritual. This is practical. I think that there are many different kinds of hospices out there now. Because Medicare pays for hospice care, they pay a certain number of dollars per day. We're going to get very practical here for a second. That's an income stream that's assured, and so for-profit companies have woken up to that, and we're in a situation now where the majority of hospices around the country are now for-profit. And in fact, some of them, many of them now, are owned by venture capital companies that come in, buy up a hospice, and make it as profitable as they possibly can and sell it in 2 or 3 years. That's what hospice has become in some cases. I still think the people who work in those hospices, the nurses, the social workers, the therapists, are fantastic people with the real interests of their patients in mind. But if I were looking for a hospice, I would be looking for a not-for-profit hospice, maybe a large county-based not-for-profit, because you'll find, and this has actually been studied scientifically now, you find that the not-for-profit hospices bring more people out to the house. It's easier to get someone to come if there's a problem. The satisfaction levels that are measured in people and families are higher in a not-for-profit situation. So just a word of advice, I think hospice works really, really well, really helps prepare people, really supports families. But if you want to take a word of real practical advice, if you're looking for a hospice, look for a not-for-profit hospice. And you'll find more often than not that the trouble breathing, the pain, all the symptoms that can really be a problem, like you say, we can control almost all of those with the right kind of attention and care, and those are problems we can solve. So I'm still all for hospice. I'm thinking, though, that the not-for-profit ones are the ones that I would look for if someone in my family needed that.
Yeah. I think there are many different aspects of everybody's lives, just as we are all individuals. There are many individualized courses of care, and I think the idea is that what we talked about today is about shedding the light on some of our stories and some of the aspects in which might arise and some of the questions that people may have. Perhaps I think that will really provoke the conversation and say, what would we like to see, where are we right now, and how would we like to go forward? And that's what we were really looking to be able to share today, yes?
Sure. That sounds perfect.
Absolutely. Dr. Stuart, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Well, I have a kind of a limited website. I haven't put a lot on it other than my book, but you can go to bradstewartmd.com, and there's a little bit about me and a little bit about my book there, and I'll be posting more material over time, but that's a good place to get started. And my book, Facing Death, Spirituality, Science, and Surrender at the End of Life, is available on Amazon. And feel free to read it, and if you want to go to the website, you can ask any questions that you want. I'll be happy to respond to you.
Very good. Well, Dr. Stuart, it was a pleasure to have you with us here today. I know there's so many people that have so many questions, and they just don't want to have the conversation. So maybe just listening to us will be able to help stimulate the process of getting it forward. So we thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. I really appreciate it.
If you'd like to find out more information about Dr. Brad Stuart, again, the book is Facing Death, Spirituality, Science, and Surrender at the End of Life. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information. And it is about being able to say it's going to be okay if you just reach out and ask the questions. What is in your heart and your soul? What is in your thoughts and your consciousness? What is in your dreams? And what are you feeling? What are your fears? It's about being able to say, this is what I think, this is what I know, and this is what I'm afraid of. Have the conversations. It's always able to find others who will be able to help you and guide you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.